Welcome. So we're going to be analyzing some gameplay of a Kandarian demon match that I had earlier. So first of all, I recommend jumping into the tutorial just to familiarize yourself with the demon and the different aspects of gameplay as the Kandarian demon. After that, I would recommend just to choose which kind of demon you want to be playing as for the time being, because if you jump into a match with an unleveled demon, you're probably not going to have a good time, especially against a level 25 survivor, which is a max rank survivor. Once you start leveling up your demon, I recommend choosing how you want to upgrade your demon pathways, because you can't level up everything. Furthermore, I think you should consider how your playstyle will affect the way you should be leveling up your demon. So for my demon, I try to focus on basic units health to start out with, just to give him more survivability. Now, as the Necromancer here, I did not have a very good match as him because he's unleveled. I was unable to summon very often, and the summons were quite weak in general, so just keep that in mind. Every demon has a different set of attributes to them. They have different skills, so your playstyle again is going to be very different depending on which one you're playing as. Regardless, I would recommend familiarizing yourself with your demon's abilities. Do not forget to trap the chests, because it could be very powerful. You could use the mini ashes, which does damage, or you could use the severed hand, which increases their fear. When upgrading in the middle of a match, I would recommend try getting traps to level 3 to start off with, but each one at max rank, it's kind of powerful. Now, when you level up your fear against these survivors, it's going to level up your demon in the bottom right corner there.
Now is our time to walk the earth once again.
So in the match, I like to think of the matches as kind of like a movie plot. So like there's an opening, there's a build-up, there's a climax, there's an ending. Oftentimes the survivors are going to spawn up on the opposite side of the map from you, but that's not always true. Sometimes they spawn somewhere near you and you're just going to bypass them. Regardless, I would recommend setting up traps when you can, just in case you're carrying around a lot of Infernal Energy. You're going to be able to max out your Infernal Energy if you're constantly moving, so if you have maxed out bar, I recommend unloading some of that Infernal Energy by trapping a few areas, because again, you never know if they're going to be ending up somewhere along the pathway that you set up traps at. For example, these survivors, they get their objectives one at a time as to the location of the map. So if you trap an area that they don't have to be at yet, but they end up having to find a second or third map piece there, then that's going to be to your benefit. Infernal Energy is sometimes scarce on the map, so keep an eye out when you're in an area as to locations of Infernal Energy points, because if you're in an area that has mostly traps and very little energy and you have a lot of survivors in the area, you might have to travel a bit just to keep the survivors entertained, so to speak. In this particular match, I know for a fact that the survivors spawned in the swamps to the southwest there, so oftentimes you're gonna overlook the survivors entirely if they're taking their time and looting in their spawn, and that's okay. I ended up doing a full circle around the perimeter of the map before they made themselves known to me, but in the meantime I set up a lot of traps in a lot of locations, just by unloading excess Infernal Energy. And the great thing about what I did is that in this area, the match ended up here, so I trapped the heck out of this place, and they got swarmed really bad. So again, if you're trapping everything, it could be very powerful later on.
Oh, someone's over here. Where?
There are a few ways that survivors will show up on your map. So if they're firing their gun, if they get into a vehicle, if their fear level is really high, then they're going to show up on your map, you're going to be able to find them. But if they're just using melee weapons and they're keeping their fear down, you're not going to be able to find them so fast. So with this first encounter, I'm not really focusing on summoning my basic units or any units really. I'm going to focus on setting traps to increase their fear, because there's a lot of areas here where they want to explore and surround them. And let's check out how powerful this could be in leveling up your abilities. Also, I recommend that you do not run into the large fences because that kind of gates the survivors in there, so they have choke points that they have to go through to access areas. So if you're gonna break through those large fences, you're just giving them shortcuts to access other areas faster instead of going all the way around. So again, as you're doing everything, I recommend moving constantly, keeping active, and just trying to keep the field loaded. If the survivors do end up tripping your traps, it is on a bit of a cooldown. You can reactivate the trap if they linger in the area. So again, that's going to be to your benefit, and I recommend you take advantage of that. Also, keep in consideration the way that you leveled up your demon and the way that your playstyle is. So for my demon, my basic units, they increase fear and they build up Infernal Energy whenever they land attacks on survivors. So that's the way I've been playing. But that's not the way I started playing out. So again, choose your strategy wisely and stick to it.
Set some shots for you too.
Possessing a survivor is a very handy way to level up their fear and level up your demon. It's also a pretty efficient way to get some knockdowns on survivors if they're not being careful. Landing a knockdown and killing a survivor is going to increase your demon's level significantly. So if you can manage one, I recommend you do that as fast as possible, but sometimes it's very hard at a low level to get a knockdown on somebody. Regardless of what is happening, you might have to alter your strategy on the fly as well, so try to keep an open skill set for your demons. For example, I've found that if I focus on leveling up my units in match, that I'm not gonna win oftentimes, so I found that leveling up my traps to level 3 is very efficient.
Set shots again.
Everything you do in the match has a risk versus reward aspect to it. So just because I'm placing all these traps doesn't guarantee that they're gonna head this way. If I'm gonna possess a survivor, do I have enough energy to maintain possession? Are there too many survivors for me to make any significant plays as I possess a survivor? So some things to consider when you have to do things with your Infernal Energy. So sometimes swarming them with all of your summons, it might not be the most efficient way to take them on. But if you happen to get somebody and they're not expecting the possession to happen, you can possibly get a good knockdown, especially if you do a ranged attack on them.
I'm still in here. Let's have some quiet time, shall we? I love watching you bleed. Tell me how much.
And I recommend that you run to your traps. That way, when you lose control of the character, they spawn up an enemy in front of them. So, just another strategy, but I didn't make it in this case. So one of the things that I like to do personally is level up the traps to level 3 right away, then level up basic units to level 3 right away. That way you're summoning up an extra unit. Also keep in mind of what survivors are in play because they have different abilities, and I think you should try and keep in mind what strengths that they are bringing to the field. So for example, Pablo is very much invisible on your map for the most part. Very hard to see, like doesn't have an outline in demon vision, so it's very hard to keep track of him sometimes, especially when you have your boss demon out. So when you level up to level 10, that's when you get access to the boss character. So when you first unlock the boss character, it's kind of weak, but if you play it right, you can do some pretty significant damage. But if you're getting swarmed by survivors, you're probably gonna get taken up pretty fast. earlier in the video, I trapped the hell out of this place, and we're seeing how badly they're getting swarmed. So again, I recommend trapping areas if you have extra Infernal Energy.
I am not in the mood.
The half-witted humans have activated the Dagger.
So when you're inside of an objective circle, you're going to be accruing Infernal Energy constantly. So this is going to help you out in these areas, so use your energy wisely, but you can also spam your summons. I'd recommend using your demon, your boss demon rather, as soon as possible in these sections, because the sooner you use it, the faster you have access to it later. At the same time, you don't want to be premature on implementing your boss demons, so again, summon, trap the area as needed. And if you see somebody on their own when you're the boss demon, try to single them out because it's going to be a fast knockdown for you. Also keep in mind that when survivors are in the takedown animation, that they're invulnerable, so you have to pretty much wait for them to be finished.
One more. Quit.
But wait, there's more! Did you know that the circle will collapse around the map if the survivors are taking too long and they have completed the pages and Kandarian demon objectives? So if you're the demon and the survivors are taking too long to get to the final objective, you still have a chance to get some easy kills. So if you're slowing them down with your summons, if you possess them and run them into the fog, which feels kind of scummy sometimes, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? It is a strategy, so what you gotta do. As long as you keep constant pressure on the survivors, you have a very strong chance of winning the match.
Run as fast as you can.
If you deplete their stamina bar, they're probably not going to be able to get away too fast. Also, I don't have footage on it, but if you possess one of their cars, be careful if the survivors are all getting out of the vehicle at once at the same time, because if they all hit their melee attack button, you just wasted a possession and you're not going to get very far with that car at all, so they're going to stop you in your tracks. Hopefully some of these tips are going to help you become a better demon player. Stay awesome out there and have fun.